The bulk of free agency moves are now over, and we are starting to get a good picture of what the Avs roster is going to look like next season. Much like my haircut, the Avs chopped off over a third of their roster. Let's start off by taking a look at their roster from Game 82 of last season. For the last game of the 16-17 season, the Avs had a 25-man roster with the 20 starting players, 3 healthy scratches in Joel Colborn, John Mitchell, and Fedor Tutin, and 2 players on injured reserve in Nikita Zadorov and Semyon Varlamov. Of these 25, 9 of the players are no longer with the team. Calvin Pickard was picked by Vegas in the expansion draft, and the other 8 all went to free agency. When you clear out all 9 of those players, and then on top of that, move Zadorov and Varlamov back to their healthy starting positions, and move Colborn back to his natural position of center, you can see that the Avs needed 2 right wings, 1 left-handed defenseman, 1 right-handed defenseman, and a backup goalie to round out their starting roster. Their free agency moves pretty much fell right in line with this. Starting with the forwards, they signed Colin Wilson and Nail Yakupov to slot in on right wing for them. With this set of forwards, you can pretty much break it up into 3 groups. The first group being the core group of Andrighetto, McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, and Duchene. These are the guys that are going to be the core of the offense, and they pretty much can operate as a 1A, 1B line setup. If Andrighetto and Landeskog swap lines, that's fine. McKinnon and Duchene can swap lines. You can move McKinnon to the left side, or you can move Duchene to the right side if you want Comfer or Jost to move up and play second line center. And then Rantanen is pretty much locked in as the first line right wing, but he could also play the second line right wing as well. The second group of Comfer, Wilson, Jost, and Yakupov is really the interesting one to watch this year. If no one impresses in training camp, Wilson is probably the default second line right winger, but he is versatile enough that he can play both wings, so if someone like Comfer or Yakupov does impress and earn that second line right wing spot, Wilson can either play down on the third or fourth line on the right wing, or move over to the left side. For example, if you want Yakupov and Jost together on the third line, you can have Wilson as a veteran presence on left wing with them. And then you have Yakupov as well. I do have him on the fourth line here, but I really don't think he'll be playing fourth line minutes. The bottom 2 lines for the Avs will probably operate as a 3A, 3B setup, at least for the first part of the season, to give equal opportunity for everyone to prove themselves. And then based on play, you can go from there. Maybe Yakupov will have earned a second line opportunity, or maybe not. And then that brings us to our third section of Colborn, Como, Soderberg, and Nieto. These guys are kind of the other pieces left over that they can kind of just be thrown in on either of the bottom 2 lines and just fit in where they're needed. I do expect there will be a scratch rotation, a lot like we had last year. So you'll see Colborn come in for Soderberg or Nieto or something like that. Or if Yakupov is struggling and it's not looking like it's going to pan out, maybe he might spend some time scratched as well. As far as injury call-ups or a potential second scratch for forwards, the first and most obvious is Rocco Grimaldi. He did get into a couple of games for us last year, and he looked pretty good. If someone like Comfer or Yakupov isn't up to snuff and can't manage to really hold down their position in the NHL this year, Grimaldi is likely to be the first one to jump right into the NHL roster for us. Then you also have Gabriel Bourque. If you're looking for an experienced veteran, he can play both wings and play a hard-nosed game on those bottom 2 lines. And third, you have AJ Greer, the youngster who likely got beat out by Comfer for a spot in the roster, really, because he fell off so hard in the second half of his AHL season last year. But if he looks like he's developing and on his way this year, he may very well get a call-up or find a permanent spot at home on the Avalanche roster. That pretty much does it for the forwards. From there, we can move on to the 2 defensive spot needs. One of them seems pretty obvious already. It's going to be Andrei Mironov filling in on that bottom pairing left side. He came over from the KHL this year. Is going to be an NHL rookie, but in his KHL time, he was an all-star as young as 20 years old at the time, so he looks fully ready to make the jump to the NHL. The last spot on D on the right side is a little bit trickier. There are 3 players probably fighting for this spot. That is Chris Bigraw, Duncan Siemens, and Anton Lindholm. All 3 of them are left-handed shots, so it is going to be a little bit tricky to see which one earns it. Ultimately, I'm going to give it to Bigraw because he has experience in the past playing on the right side, and he does have more NHL games under his belt than either of the other 2. So that leaves both Siemens and Lindholm as the scratches on defense. And it is possible that Lindholm does get sent down to the AHL to get more experience. Or perhaps the Avs have decided Duncan Siemens isn't going to be valuable at an NHL level and they do want him down in the AHL to let Lindholm be the 7th rotating defenseman. Either way, they will be the first injury call-up in case of that, so they're really not further down the roster at all. The spot to watch on defense this year is probably the second and third pairing left-handed spots. Barberio, realistically, on a quality defense, is either a third pairing offensive guy or maybe even a 7th defenseman. And with Mironov coming over with all-star status, he's going to be looking to push for that second pairing defensive guy, especially with his ability to hit and play solid defense. Hopefully he can be kind of a Zadorov light for us. And even if it isn't Mironov, the other 3 defensemen that I've already talked about are all going to be pushing to try and earn that bottom pairing spot on the left side as well, and could quickly push Barberio out of the lineup if he is struggling. As far as the injury call-up situation goes for the Avs in defense this year, they really don't have a whole lot of options. So they did sign David Warsofsky over free agency. He's an NHL-AHL tweener who has had multiple call-ups across his career, so he could work for a short stint of injury for a quick call-up to get the job done. And they will also be watching how Nicholas Milosh and Sergei Boykov progress this year as prospects in the AHL. If one of them does look ready, I would love to see him get some experience in the NHL, but it wouldn't surprise me if both need the full year in the AHL to get up to speed. And finally, you have the backup goalie slot to fill, and they did that directly in free agency by signing Jonathan Bernier. He can be a solid backup for us, and if Varley goes down with injury, he has in the past been capable of taking on a starter's load. In the case of injury, we do have prospect Spencer Martin scheduled to be the starter down in the AHL for us all year. I would really like to get him as much experience as possible in the AHL, but he could work as an emergency call-up if we need it. So this should pretty much be your Avalanche roster for the first chunk of the season. Maybe the lines are a little bit jumbled up compared to this, and maybe you see Grimaldi get called up for someone, but this should at least have most of the people correct. That is, as long as Duchesne is on the roster once we actually start playing hockey. It's starting to look like he is going to stay in Colorado now, which I am perfectly happy with. But if he does get traded, then all of this roster is going to look drastically different, not only to fill the hole that Duchesne leaves, but to slot in the people we get back for him. That is the end of this Avalanche roster review. Thank you for watching. A shout out to Mile High Hockey for hosting this video on their website. If you're not watching from there, be sure to check it out. They're a great resource for all the Avalanche news you need. If you are watching from there, then awesome. Feel free to check out more of my YouTube channel if you like what you saw. I'll put a link down below that you can click on and you can see some of my other videos. I'm Rudo3, and can we sign our RFAs already?